Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Years ago, I remember engaging and talking to a non-Muslim guy who was, interested in Islam. And it wasn't just me, it was myself and a few other friends. We were explaining to him, what Islam is all about, and he had lots of questions. He would say, what about this? What about this? And we would answer. And alhamdulillah, all of us were students who were studying Islam actually. So alhamdulillah, I think our answers were pretty decent, pretty well informed. But he just kept on coming with new questions. And it got to a point where it started to feel like he was coming up with questions for the sake of a question. It didn't really feel like it was genuine. It seemed like he was like scraping from the bottom of the barrel just to come up with something to object to. And so anyway, that was just a feeling that I had. And so I remember one time we were in the car together. I was driving him back to his place. And I said, look, man, here's a little homework assignment for you. Just try it out. Try, when you get home, it could be tonight, tomorrow, whenever, pray to God, or pray to the Creator, or pray to whoever is out there. You don't have to specify, this particular name, this particular deity, or whatever the case is. Just say, if there truly is a God, a Creator, a designer, someone who made me, who gave me a purpose, if you're out there and if you can hear me, guide me to the truth. But this was my stipulation. I said, you have to say, guide me to the truth, and if you do, I will actually follow it. So this is what I mentioned to him. And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. And so I think a few weeks went by, and then we had another get together with myself and a few other friends, and we were answering his questions again. But I pick him up, and before we get there, he gets in the car, and I say, okay, so did you do it? And he goes, did I do what? I go, the homework assignment. He goes, what do you mean? I said, the whole thing about, praying and asking for guidance, and, that you'd apply it if you were actually convinced. And he goes, oh, well, the thing is, I still have a bunch of questions about Islam. I'm still wondering about X, Y, and Z. And he starts to bring up these topics. I say, whoa, hold on. This has nothing to do with Islam in particular. I didn't say pray, to the concept of God from an Islamic perspective or from this religion, that religion. This has nothing to do with the particular religion of Islam. I said, just ask the Creator, ask the Sustainer, if there's someone out there listening, right? He said, well, the thing is, I still have questions. I said, what do you mean you have questions? This doesn't have to do with questions about Islam. And so it felt like he was trying to dodge and get out of it. And I said, look, man, and finally when I was kind of pressing him, and you could say almost cornering him and saying, come on, why didn't you do it? He finally said, okay, fine. I didn't do it because I was afraid. And I was like, what? Seriously? He was like, well, at least I'm honest. And he was kind of offended that I was, shocked by his answer. He's like, at least I'm honest. I was like, yeah, no, it's good. And I said, well, at least now we have finally figured out what the issue is. It felt like you were coming up with objections and questions that really weren't really on your mind. They weren't really big questions that you had trouble with. It really felt like you were coming up with anything. And the reason is now we understand why, because you are genuinely afraid to commit. Because even when it comes to the idea of praying to God and saying, listen, I will commit if I'm convinced, you couldn't bring yourself to do that. So it seems like you just have a fear of commitment. All these other questions, they're sort of side issues. They're not the real crux of the matter. Anyway, point is that I think this was a really important moment in his life to recognize what was holding him back and what he was truly afraid of. And now that we had, finally discovered it, he could move forward knowing that this was his issue. And I think this applies to a lot of us. And a lot of us, sometimes we answer people's questions, and which is good. You have to answer people's questions. That's great. But at the same time, it's important to dig a little deeper and say, what is really holding you back? Is there a fear of commitment? If you are convinced, if I do answer every single one of your questions, and if everything is clear, would you then finally commit to this path or not? And sometimes you'd be shocked to find out that the answer is no. I'm too afraid of commitment, and I'm too afraid to be sort of relegated to a particular lifestyle. I don't want any rules. That's really at the crux of the matter. So anyway, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those, inshallah ta'ala, who can get past all the superficial questions and then get down to what's at the core of the matter, so that we can really help people figure out what's going on within themselves and then ultimately discover the truth, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.